everybody? Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be continuing on with my review of the complete 8-ball. I'm going one issue at a time, so this I'll be looking at issue 2 of the complete 8-ball. If you haven't seen the video for issue 1, make sure you go check that out. I've never read the complete 8-ball before. I've read some of the stories that have been collected, like Ghost World, that have been collected and other things, but I've never read the whole thing. So this is a pretty fresh reaction to how it worked as a whole. This issue 2 looks like it was published in February of 1990. So a lot of the work was being done in 1989. This issue is a little bit more what I was fearing and expecting from Dan Clowes. Again, I think he's probably one of the first guys to do this stuff, or at least a new wave of it after the underground artists. But I think he sets a precedent for a lot of things that I don't like about future comics. That doesn't mean I don't think these are good comics. It's just a little bit hard. Like, I feel like there's a certain... This is Gen X, right? This is the rebellious Gen X stuff. And I definitely see myself as a tail end of the Gen X. But this is peak Gen X, and there's something about it that feels a little entitled and whiny to me. And that's always been kind of my vibe with a lot of Dan Clowes' stuff, is that he wants to critique everybody else but not look at himself. Maybe that's just this issue in particular. I don't know. We'll see as we go. But there seems to be this thing about that time in the very beginning of the 90s, all the way up through 9/11, actually, where like the world was in a pretty good place, but for some reason you got a lot of just angst everywhere, and this smacks of that to me. So this first story, The Truth, this is like about an artist, someone who really legitimately aspires towards a unique artistic voice, and then has realized that has made their stuff inaccessible, and so they just start painting like cartoon character ripoffs and get real famous for that. And that's like, the truth is that people are fucking morons. It just seems like a very, I don't know. I can't get into that approach. Just like, I don't know. It's not a thing to say for me. Like, it's not interesting. Like, we all know that. But I get it. Again, like, at the time, those things weren't being said, or at least not in comics. So it works. Like a Velvet Glove and Cast Iron, this is part 2 of that ongoing story. I had to flip back and see, okay, how did this guy get in this cop car? I forget about that. And wondering a bit, like in issue 1, when he gets picked up in the cop car, they think he's been drinking, and they put him in the car, and then they throw this three-eyed prostitute in the car that reminds him of the porn star that he's chasing after. I don't know where the three-eyed prostitute went. This story feels like he's making it up scene by scene or panel by panel, which is fine. It makes it an interesting, surreal story, and I actually enjoy this one the most of all of them so far, just because it's more of like a story. It's not just so much a critique of like characters, and I'll get into that more later. But it is very strange and surreal. It just seems to kind of go from one unrelated situation to the next. Like, he winds up in a cult where there's like a kind of Charles Manson-esque cult leader, Godfrey, who, I don't know. It's just strange. I don't know what it will all add up to. Maybe nothing. That kind of story could just lead nowhere. I do like this part here where this character out of the cult's talking about the coming battle of the sexes, basically, and that women are going to win. There's going to be a great cleansing, and Godfrey will emerge as the stern and loving father of the new world. The new world will be one people, one gender, one culture. Esperanto, the universal language, will be spoken. The girls are already learning it. And that's another one where I do feel like Clowes is being a good prophet, in a sense. Like, I know those conversations were happening in the late 80s, early 90s, but like in the earlier issue where he's predicting, he's got the Christian predicting chips in everyone's heads and no one using money anymore. It's like the culture was doing a pretty good job of predicting where we're heading, and I think that as well, this kind of move towards one everything, removing gender, I know we're celebrating culture, but that's always, this cultural diversity thing is it's just another sales strategy to leads towards homogenization, really. And so I like that Clowes is picking up on that zeitgeist and running with that. I think me as a, tail end Gen X, I have those same kind of fears still of moving towards this homogenized culture. I think that's a big Gen X thing. This globalization and homogenization bothers us. So that's fun that they encounter that. I also really like this strange, like Tina the potato character here, is the waitress, and then he goes home with her, and that's where we're gonna pick up next time. So again, the book is just getting really, really strange. This, I Hate You Deeply, a Lloyd Llewellyn adventure. I've definitely read this before, and this is pretty much like what I think of when I think of Dan Clowes. Is just, especially the early Dan Clowes stuff, it's just this like pissed off 90s that has nothing to be pissed off about, really. Like, the world was pretty good during that time, but for some reason everyone came out angsty and critical of everything, and there's like a coolness in that. And I'm assuming that's why this book was cool at the time, is it was like really nailing that last gasp of counterculture, maybe, like where counterculture was starting to realize that it's ineffective. And I think by 2005-ish, when I was in college, like counterculture had pretty much realized that it could all be assimilated. And this to me seems like the last gasp of counterculture, critiquing everything and everyone, including yourself. And it's just not for me. There are, I guess, acute observations, but they're always stuffed into like these gross generalities. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge proponent of generality. I think you need generality to function and communicate. But in this sense, like, I don't know, you're not doing much with it. You're just identifying, like, he's just identifying different types and then saying what they are. And it's just not a nuanced picture. And then he comes back and critiques himself for that, which is even more annoying. Like, here he says, muscle men, blah, blah, blah. Fuck you guys for getting buff. Like, yeah, like some people, but maybe they just like fitness. Like, I wish I was healthier. I wish I had time to be healthier. Don't hate on him because you're a skinny little nerd, Like, I don't know, military types, fashion plates. Right here, I really like this. Occultists, New Agers, and anyone seeking simple catch-all solutions to the unanswerable questions. But put in a story where you've got simple catch-all generalities of everyone else, it's just that kind of shitty, self-undermining, I don't know. Like, you're being an asshole and you shouldn't be doing it, but you go ahead and give yourself a pass anyways. That's how I feel about this. It just seems young, angry, pissed off. I know in the back he says he's married already, but to me it just feels like someone really unhappy with life, trying to get laid or something. A lot of the stories have that vibe. And I'm generalizing, so he's putting me right in there with them. And then he has right here, people who hide behind cartoon characters to espouse their unpopular opinions. So it's that little, like, ironic, that's another thing from the Gen X, is the incessant irony. I'm from a little bit later on, where we had albums like Dillinger Escapes Plan, Irony is a Dead Scene, and articles about irony died post 9/11 and all that. So this kind of like self-referential irony is just, it's something that we were fighting against when I was in college. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just a generational gap thing between the two books. I did like this right here, where he identifies guys with short hair on top and long hair in back. I guess in 1989, 1990, we hadn't come up with the term mullet yet. Mullets are coming back here in Alabama. I don't know about elsewhere, but that is distressing to me that mullets are coming back. Fanatics, idealists, all of these kind of things that he goes after here. And then he goes into how to formulate an opinion, and kind of does a self-critique there, where it's like, oh, your comics are really great, and so he has to form his opinion accordingly, which just means think the opposite. So he immediately thinks, I suck, someone liked me, therefore I must suck. Then he goes after humorless cartoonist, college boys, bothersome pests, adorable cartoon characters. I don't know, it's just like an endless gripe, and I guess I'm doing an endless gripe in this video review, but it's just not for me. And then right here, he even says, like he's getting a letter from someone complaining about his gross generalizations, and then just like leans into it even more. So he's aware of what he's doing, but I don't know. And then he takes another shot at artists. This is where you can see like the cartoonist who went to art school. And I know Art School Confidential does the same thing, where he just obviously wasn't happy around the fine artists. So that's where it's like he couldn't bring that back to comics. He's still a comic artist obsessed with the history of comics. He didn't bring art school to comics. He brought comics to art school and hated art school, obviously. And then here he is, you know, just like trying to do a sales pitch to the ladies, I guess, even though he says in here, no, I'm married. It has that young, horny cartoonist thing to it where it's like, yeah, but because I'm such an asshole, I'm good in bed. Hit me up at a convention, girls. Like, I don't know. It just felt like that. So, not a big fan of that little feature. I do really like that they publish. He's got the letter columns in here recreated, which is fun. And there's one that was sent to Gary Groth where they're basically critiquing the book for what I just said, is that there's these characters all seem like cardboard cutouts for generalities, that Clowes doesn't seem to be, at least to this point by issue 2, dealing in character in any real compelling way, that he's writing caricatures, he's writing stereotypes. And that's always kind of been my sense of Clowes, but going through this I'll be curious to see, you know, if I've just formed a false impression of him. But this person's basically saying, I don't know, this all seems like a bit hollow. He's just parodying characters and stuff like that, and I don't find it compelling, so I won't be reading more. But it's also cool to see that you have Scott McCloud, Peter Badge, Robert Crumb, Michael T. Gilbert, who are all like praising the book. So you have some of that in here. Some of these other names I don't recognize, but pretty big praise coming from a masterpiece from Crumb, a masterpiece by Badge, brilliant from Scott McCloud. Thank goodness that there are guys like Pete Badge, Bob Crumb, and Dan Clowes from Michael T. Gilbert. So that's awesome. You know, that's cool to have that in there. And then this is so like 90s to me as well. He's doing a prank phone call contest, and that's that young, just kind of asshole that Dan Clowes seems to be, is that he would get a real kick out of what was it, like the Jersey Boys or the Fat Boys or something like that, doing prank calls. Even like, to me, like Mike Patton, Faith No More, Mr. Bungle is very much of this same era and this same like fuck everything attitude. And I know that there's some prank calls on some of their albums, some of Mike Patton's projects. So this seems very of the time to me. And I love that he's suggesting like, hey, you know, prank call somebody, make their day a little more annoying, and then send it to me and I'll pick the best one and I'll send you some original art. So I'm really curious, like if this exists online somewhere, like the tape that won and what original page of art from issue 2 they got. I don't know if they'll follow it up because he says he's going to talk about it in the next issue. So I'm curious about that. That's kind of fun and very, very of the times. This all to me feels very of the 90s and very of you know, I don't know. I know Fantagraphics is connected with the grunge scene and stuff, and I'm assuming this was part of that. It just feels very, very 90s to me. You know, but also like given what else was going on in the 90s, thank goodness that this was a product, even if some of it I don't like. So that issue a little bit less for me, a little bit reinforcing what I was fearing, but we'll see. I keep an open mind going forward. I know there's plenty of Dan Clowes stuff I like. So thanks for joining me as I looked at issue 2. I'll be back for issue 3 through 18 at some point. If you appreciate what we're doing here on the channel, the best ways to support us are through our Patreon. There's a couple different tiers there with some chances to win prizes, some voting that you can be involved in depending on what your tiers you're in, and get early access to all of our videos as they get made. The money that we make from there helps us buy these books that we're doing the reviews on, so that's much appreciated. And then supporting what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing, that's really the best way to really help the mission here. So I'll show you a couple books that you could go purchase to support Living the Line now. The Exile by Eric Creek is a gorgeously illustrated Viking saga of revenge. Eric Creek calls it his Viking Western. It's about a guy who's been away on the warpath and is returning home to some family troubles that have to be resolved. And this is told in just this amazing, like, kind of 3-color art style that looks like old woodblock cuts or something. It's absolutely gorgeous book that you've got to pick up. House on Fire by Matt Battaglia is a just gorgeous book where Matt's kind of making an emotional response to the years of COVID and wrapping that into a sci-fi dystopian future that really the sci-fi dystopian's backgrounded, and you're focused on the emotional journey of 2 characters in a really beautiful way. And then that's enhanced by Matt's like really awesome, loose, kind of Paul Popish dry brush work. And then Sean and Matt have worked to get this second kind of orange spot color in there that's going to look really, really beautiful, and has allowed Matt to use his dry brush technique to add tone to the thing too. So with Sean's production technique, this is going to be a gorgeous book with a lot of heart. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.